Good morning, family. How's everybody doing this morning? So, how many hats do you wear? You know what I mean on the personal level. How many hats do you wear? Well, from the response, evidently, there are many of my subscribers, individuals who watch my content. There are many who wear various hats. From the response we got, evidently the piece was enjoyable. And if you're wondering what piece I'm talking about, we're talking about the piece entitled "The Brim." And so, of course, in these kinds of pieces, we have rich symbolism that's involved. And usually I don't make a piece unless there is some symbolism involved. And really, the piece originated from that saying that individuals in life, you know some, I know some, I might even be one, that wear many hats. So, what are we talking about? Well, if you are able to watch the poem, the piece in its entirety, then you know that the hat refers to the responsibilities that a person decides to take on. And a lot of times, the responsibilities that you take on have a lasting effect on the rest of your life. Now, notice that I say some, because as you see in the piece, there were certain responsibilities, certain hats that the young man tried on, and he tried them on only for a short period of time to see if the wearing of those hats fit into his life. And so I think that's a wise thing to do, especially for the short term. And then even involved in it is the ability to know yourself and to know with all modesty that some things are outside of what you want to accomplish in life. There's just some things that you're not interested in, and you have to know yourself and your modest limitations in order to know which things are not for you. And that's okay. Some things might not be. But then you notice that as the story goes along, there are a multitude of hats. As a matter of fact, there are hats in this store from the floor to the ceiling. Hats everywhere, right? And what I like about the whole premise of the piece is you, as an individual, especially if we're talking about the young men who I normally speak to, you have the choice of what responsibilities you want to take on. Whether it be long-term or short-term, you have a choice in what responsibilities you would take on. And as I mentioned, some responsibilities that you take on can affect the rest of your life. There are certain things that you choose to be responsible for that can either direct your life in a positive, happy way, or it can have the opposite effect. And one of the things, and that's the whole basis of this podcast, one of the things that I'm hoping is that the young men, or the men in general within the sound of my voice, will take on the responsibility of gaining, maintaining, developing, and growing in their manhood. You see, we all have things that we can work on, and that pursuit, that desire to want to be better, I want to be a better man today than I was yesterday, is a responsibility I think that's worthwhile. I really do. And so as the piece goes along, you notice that the young man, he's, as I mentioned, trying on various hats, and then he runs into a shelf with a brown hat that catches his attention. Now, why does it catch his attention? Because earlier he tried on hats that were flashy, some that had decorations on it, some that had colors that stood out. But what was so special about this brown felt hat that he found? What was so special about it? Well, it's what the hat required from him that made it special. If you notice in the poem, the hat required him to be the man that he was created to be. So now you'll notice that the hat that he chose, it wasn't ostentatious. It didn't draw a lot of attention to itself. It was a plain brown hat for all accounts and purposes, when we think about it, right? So it wasn't anything that was very special about the hat in itself. But what the hat called for was something that agreed with the young man. It required him to take on the responsibility of being the very best man that he possibly could be. And the words of the poem, he was going to become the man that God had created him to be. Now, whether you agree with that concept or not is not the point. The point is, if you're going to take on the responsibility, something that I've observed in my 43 years of life is that if you have a say in what responsibilities you take on, then you're more serious about the responsibilities themselves. You're more serious about how you handle those responsibilities, because these are the ones that you've chosen, right? I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, a man, one of the responsibilities that he takes upon himself is to have a family, right? And so nowadays, which is an astronomical number to me, over $300,000 is what it takes to raise a child from 0 to 18 in the present day. So that's a major responsibility. And on top of just providing for that child, nurturing the child, making sure that the child grows up to be a competent and a valuable adult, is part of this man's responsibility. But because he chose this responsibility, he planned for this responsibility, he was intentional in making this particular decision, then he is overjoyed at taking on those responsibilities and making sure that those responsibilities are met. See what I mean? So that having a family, in his opinion, would be one of the best decisions that he's made, one of the best things that he's ever been responsible for. You see, responsibility is not something that we should shy away from, because it helps you to develop and grow. Responsibilities also help you to develop self-esteem and self-respect. Think about it. Those responsibilities that a person take on, as I mentioned, there are many and varied, but whatever responsibility you choose to take on, if you continue at it, if you refuse to give up, give in, and give out, then guess what? You'll start to become better. Those areas where you had a weakness, you'll start to develop strength. You'll be able to deal with situations that, in your opinion, before you took on this responsibility, these situations were things that you absolutely could not deal with. You couldn't even imagine yourself being a father of children. You couldn't imagine yourself being a faithful, loving husband who provided for his wife and his children. You couldn't imagine that. You couldn't imagine it. And so the maturity that comes with accepting responsibility can help give a person direction. And then after you have seen the results of taking on the responsibility, after you've seen all of the benefits that come from being a good father, being a good husband, being a good brother, being a good man, all come from responsibility. Now let's break this down a little bit further. Let's make this a little bit more simple for our discussion. A lot of times, and I agree, you're here in these spaces that the role of a man is to provide and protect and to teach, right? Think about that. Provision, protection, instruction, okay? Now, of course, as men, when you get into developing your manhood, you'll understand that there are many more things that you have to do. Many more things are required of you, but those are the basic three, right? And in those basic three, responsibility is the basis of all three. I'm going to be responsible for providing the needs of my family. Responsibility. I'm going to be responsible for keeping my family safe as much as I possibly can. Responsibility. I am going to be responsible for teaching my wife and my children what's expected of them in the world, and helping them to come to conclusions that will help them to make good decisions that will help them to have a better life. Responsibility. Everything that you do, especially if it's going to be impactful, especially if it's going to be something that's going to affect everyone, is going to center around responsibility. Now, as I mentioned, you have the choice in what responsibilities you would take on, what responsibilities you want, and really that decision is made based upon what makes sense to you, what's logical to you in your decision-making process. And then also, it has to do with what things you're willing to live with. I made this decision, and so I'm willing to live with the consequences of this decision. I'm willing to take responsibility for whatever may transpire. Responsibility. And I know what you're thinking, especially the young men who are listening. This sounds very time-consuming, very taxing, and I will agree it is. To be a responsible person, a lot of times that the response to an individual who is responsible is more responsibility. You think about it. If you prove yourself to be responsible and you have a secular job, right? You have employment. Usually the responsible people are the ones who shoulder the majority of the work that's involved, right? Because they're responsible. And then they're put in position where they are trusted with more things that they have to accomplish throughout the day, more situations that they have to deal with. You have to be intentional in the way that you deal with those around you. See? Responsibility. So I guess if I were to sum it up, I would say this. There's no way to escape responsibility. A person is going to have to be responsible in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But the good thing about it, the thing that gives us a fighting chance in life, is that we're able to choose which things we'll be responsible for. You get to choose if you want to be a father. That is, if you're intentional now. If you are making sure that you're doing things the way you should, you get to choose whether or not you'll have a family, right? You get to choose how you'll conduct yourself. You get to choose how you think. You get to choose how you speak. See, all of these are things that you can choose and be responsible for. All of them. So it's necessary for us to take on responsibility. Responsibility and manhood, really, they go hand in hand. Because the desire to move forward as a man and the progress is also a responsibility. It's a responsibility to those around you. And of course, you have to understand that now when you take responsibility for someone or something, then if you are fully committed to seeing that thing work out, then at the end of the day, you will reap the benefit if it does. And then if it doesn't, then you still don't walk away empty-handed, because you're given the knowledge and the wisdom from that situation to do a better job next time. So either way, responsibility is going to benefit you. Responsibility in the end, and we're all interested in this as men, is going to make you into the man that you always wanted to be. And that's not a problem. As a matter of fact, I would encourage that everyone, no matter whether you're a young woman or a young man or an older woman or an older man, to look at responsibilities as a way of maturing. And that's really what it's about. And then you'll notice that you start to make progress too, after you chose to be responsible for certain things in your life. They just don't happen haphazardly. You take responsibility and you direct the way that things go. And that's a better way to do things. That's a better way to do things, because you're taking control of situations that might in the future come back to either be a benefit to you or it might come back to haunt you. So responsibilities, the many hats that you wear, do the best with each hat that you are given. Do the best with each hat that you choose. And I think that life will reward you with good things. It certainly has for me, because a responsibility for me, even though in the beginning I hesitated, it turned out to be a wonderful thing. So I love you. I hope the week goes well for you in everything that you do. Peace!
The clerk simply smiled and quietly said, "Young man, every hat places weight on your head. You're not buying fashion or fabric or art. You're choosing what burden will shape your heart.